Welcome to METV's series on planning for college. My name is Groelle, and it is my pleasure to host these programs designed to assist students and families with the transition to college. Our programs will bring to you a number of guests who will share their expert advice on finding the right college for you, preparing for and getting into college, paying for college, and tips for succeeding once you get there. For nearly 30 years, I've had the privilege of counseling students and their families through the college admissions process. For most families, educational planning begins well before the senior year in high school. Parents of grade school children often wonder what their children will be like when they head off to college. For many families, this day has arrived. Their child has successfully navigated the array of college prep courses, the college admissions process, and now preparing to leave home to embark on their freshman year of college. For most graduating seniors, this may be the first time they have lived away from home, shared a room, and been in charge of their daily activities. Indeed, getting out of bed on time, attending classes, participating in clubs, sports, or community service, even making friends will be very much up to them. Of course, students are not the only ones making this transition. Parents, too, must navigate these uncertain waters, providing support and sharing the joys of their children's well-earned independence. Yet, particularly for families sending their first child off to college, there is an understandable anxiety and uncertainty in the unfamiliar journey they are about to experience. Today's topic is letting go, the departure for college. Joining me today are three guests who will offer words of advice to parents and students as they pack up for college this summer for the first time. Dr. Wendy Bashant is Dean of Students at New College in Sarasota. And Wetmore is the Director of Family and Student Relations at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg. And with us is Kristine Kelly. She is a 2011 University of South Florida graduate, and she is a Green and Gold Guide and peer counselor. Thank you for joining me today. I think we'll start off with you, Wendy, if we can, and with each of you to discuss with us just briefly what it is that you do as you assist families and students with transition to college this fall.
Sure, Robin. One of the things that I do, I'm the Dean of Students at New College, and many people wonder what a dean does. And I say that the main job of a Dean of Students is to get the student from orientation to graduation in one piece. We also think of ourselves as the shepherds, and we like to try to help students acclimate themselves to college, figure out the nuts and bolts of college, and hopefully thrive. That's a good sign that we've actually done it well. I'm involved with orientation, which is a week-long program at New College. I'm also very much involved with graduation. I think the most exciting thing for me to see is to see the students who looked slightly scared in orientation look confident and comfortable as they walk across the stage. So that's my main goal.
How about you, Anne? How about your work at Eckerd?
I'm also housed in the office of the Dean of Students. Sometimes individuals in my position will be in the advancement office, but at Eckerd we believe strongly that parents are as much a part of the educational process for the students as the students going through the process. And so I'm primarily a liaison between the college and the parents of the college students. And so if they don't know who to call to ask a question, they can contact me. I also organize family weekend events. I work closely on commencement and then do a parent orientation for the parents of first-year students, and keep a website for parents. I send them an online newsletter with information that will be helpful to them about move-out dates or graduation dates, exam week, and give them tips about how they can help to stay in contact with their students, what's appropriate in terms of sending care packages that everyone always enjoys receiving, and then giving them guidance about how to step back when that's necessary too, if their student needs to learn to make their own doctor's appointment or to speak with the professor about a grade that maybe they were not as happy with and what they could have done differently. So really trying to help the parents become a coach to their college student.
I think it's interesting that the leadership that Eckerd has taken to develop a full-time position, in a sense, to assist parents particularly with this connection with their child as they go through college, and hopefully a 4-year experience where they graduate 4 years down the road.
Yes. No, I think our Dean of Students was visionary in creating my position. It's about 8 years now that I've been in student affairs. Typically, the Director of Family or Parent Relations would be a fundraising arm of the college, and we certainly have our Parents Council that we appreciate their support. But really, he saw the need for this position because so many parents are used to being involved almost daily in the education of their student, going into the classroom and volunteering. And so when the student turns 18 and as an adult, there are certain privacy acts that are then put into place. And so almost a wall the parents sometimes see it as is put up because they don't have access to their students' grades. They cannot speak with a student affairs official about their activities at school unless we have the student's permission. But I always want to caution parents that if there's ever a health issue or a danger issue for parents, then these privacy acts they're not in effect. We immediately contact parents to let them know about the safety of their children. But I'm talking about daily performance in class, or if they were to have a minor infraction in their residence halls in terms of college policy, then that's really between the student and the college. And if we encourage open communication between the families and the students, that's the primary relationship that we're trying to build and strengthen their communication skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Kristine, you have just experienced your 4 years in college,
yes,
and I understand you were a high school student here in Florida.
Yes, ma'am, Cape Coral, Florida.
And you've been involved in a number of clubs and activities at school.
Yes,
and could you tell us a little bit about your relationships and what kinds of work you've been doing with incoming students and families?
My longest organization that I was a part of was Green and Gold Guides, which is our campus tour guides on campus. We work through the admissions office. So that we do weekly tours with parents and prospective students. Basically, we started off with an information session and then a student panel where parents and students just kind of get to ask any type of questions that they have about student life, whether it be like being involved in organizations, living in our residence halls, going to class, transportation, those type of questions. And then we actually do about a 90-minute walking tour of our entire campus, which includes like dining halls, residence halls, our Marshall Student Center, which is like our student union on campus, some academic buildings, just so they get a feel for what our campus is like. And then throughout that tour, it's more of like an individualized, they can come up, ask personal questions, that type of thing. I was also a peer counselor. I started college through a program called FSI, which stands for Freshman Summer Institute. And then when I was entering my junior year, so in 2009, I was a peer counselor for them. So the first 6 weeks that they're in college, I actually lived with the students over a summer semester. And that really helped them like move in. Brought some of my students down to like the bookstore to show them like how to purchase their books. Just getting used to campus and living, being a college student, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've been struck with is that as we've all discussed our various orientation practices, that it seems more that we're doing a parent orientation or orientation for families as well as for students. And I think what we've discovered are that the questions that students have are different from the questions that the parents are going to have. And so I think it's important that parents encourage their students to, it might be scary to walk into an auditorium and not know anyone, but that that's a step of independence, and that they can ask their questions that they may not want to ask in front of their parents about college. And then and the other side, the parents are free to ask the questions and not feel as if they're going to embarrass their students, because it's fascinating to me when I'm welcoming parents and students the first time to campus to sort of see, the moms and dads seem almost more excited, and the student is much more interested in trying to appear cool and like they've always been there, but you know that their hearts are just beating as quickly as everyone else. So I think it's important that they go to their separate orientations. And I think maybe when you do tours, sometimes do you all do separate tours or the families all together?
For actual tours, we do they're all together. But a lot of our tour guides do take approaches where they'll be like, oh, like we introduce ourselves to them and then have the students introduce themselves to us. So like, oh, okay, raise your hand if you're a student, and it kind of puts like a separation between the parents and the students. A lot of times you'll get the parents like just kind of overwhelming you with questions, but more towards the ends when the students start kind of feel more comfortable, and they'll just be like, oh, okay, well, what about this? We had a lot of questions about living on campus, like how do I get to choose my roommate, or is there a curfew, or those type of things that maybe not like when we're standing still explaining something, but more when we're walking, and like the student can come up and kind of ask without like their parents listening, so they don't get, I don't know, some they're just shy to ask in front of their parents a lot of times. But
the types of questions that the parents ask us are safety questions they're primarily interested in, and career-based questions, whereas students are much more interested in the nuts and bolts issues of how do I get to the bookstore. I thought it was interesting you said you took them to the bookstore, because it is a strange thing to go down to a bookstore, and the bookstore isn't necessarily Barnes & Noble, it's actually a bookstore that's specific for your classes, and trying to figure out what books you have to take and what classes you're taking identified on the bookshelf walls can be very, very useful and helpful.
Right. I think that it's important that parents need to realize that this is the first time, as you mentioned in your introduction, that these students have lived on their own, and so they're trying to negotiate the basics of where am I going to get my meal, how do I use my meal card. They have to find the various dining facilities on campus. If they have a cold, their mom isn't calling the pediatrician. They have to know where the health center is.
Who's going to do my laundry?
Yeah. And so I think if parents hear their students asking those questions, I wouldn't want them to feel frustrated about, well, why aren't they thinking about their next career move, and what is their summer job going to be, and where are they going to get their internships, but that it's really a process that first year in terms of I'm taking charge of my life, and so where are the services that I'm doing that. So they should feel encouraged if they hear those students asking.
It is kind of like you want them to be able to like ask the questions on their own, because as much as, like, I know even when I came on my campus tour, I don't really even I remember my tour, but I don't remember the information given to me. And I remember, the only thing I really do remember is my mom asking a question and me being like, oh, like, why are you asking a question? So like, just kind of, I don't know, it's just that embarrassment thing, like, Mom, I'm 18, you don't need to ask questions for me. And then when they do get the questions answered, like, the parents know the information, but then the students are not always listening. So if there is a question that is more student-based, like, to make sure that the student does answer or ask the question or go and do the task, because if you do it for them all the time, or like you ask all the questions, you're not gonna know as a student what to do. And I learned that the hard way my freshman year when I had to go do things on my own. But it was definitely beneficial, because then the next 3 years I was able to do it on my own. But I'm sure she knew all the answers. She just made me go find it myself, just so I would know, like what to do.
I think it's very important for students to be sure that they're watching their emails and any letters that they're receiving from the schools, because the deposits are in and they've made their decisions this time of year. But throughout the summer, they're going to be receiving continued communications from a variety of different departments on the campus where they're going to be going. And oftentimes their admission information starts to go down, and they're getting more information from housing and from resident life, and perhaps the dean of students sends a letter of welcome, and there'll be a variety of different host of organizations that might be contacting them based on their pattern of experiences in high school. And I think a lot of times seniors, there's a sense of relief that their senior year is over, all their tests are finished, they have their diploma, and they just want to take a break. And oftentimes they travel, and families are traveling. But the reality is that they need to stay in touch, because each school is a little different in terms of their timeline. But housing may have already been determined. Maybe they send in their housing information back in March or April. But many schools initiate that housing information with the roommate forms and so forth in May or June.
We do it in June, actually. So, and the other thing I'd say along the same lines is that the students will be getting email with a address for the college that they're going to. And it's really, really important to sign up for that email from the college, because all of your wonderful high school email, Stargirl91 or whatever it might be, is no longer one that we're using. We're sending out things to the students using their new college or their Eckerd or their USF address. So getting yourself connected and hooked into that is really, really crucial. We sometimes have students who haven't checked into their email at all until they're here. It's usually September 15th, and they're getting all sorts of notices about how they have to take this computer exam or this immunization, and it becomes somewhat of a nightmare to be behind schedule. So really, once they pay really a close attention to the mailings we send you, we send a lot. We send usually one every 2 weeks just to sort of show you how much we love you. And along the same lines, there's very, very important information in it. Some of it's fun stuff. We send a book out that's the first year book, and you should read it. It's fun, it's interesting, it's about school. But also we send out important information about signing up for language classes or math classes or all sorts of other courses
placement.
that will get you ready. It's placement information.
Are your institutions using Facebook or the communities? I know that we are doing that a lot. Particularly with entering classes, that way roommates are connecting, or they're connecting with RAs or other upperclassmen who know the ins and outs of the college. So we try to use the technology where the students are.
We have a couple of them at USF. We have, well, actually on Facebook, we have like admissions groups. So if you like just search like USF admissions, we actually have admissions groups on Facebook that you could like join and be a part of. Like I think this one says class of 2011 or 2012, and you can join that one. And then we also have a program at USF called U Connect, which is through our new student connections office, and they work. We have a big event called Week of Welcome that starts at the beginning of. We actually have at the beginning of all our semesters, so summer, fall, and spring. But fall is the really big one, and it used to be a week. It's more like 10 days now. And I was a Week of Welcome leader my sophomore year. And basically what it is, it's just a bunch of events that get put on throughout the first like 10 days that like welcome students. So there's a bunch of free food every day, which is the best part. But they're just like kind of like getting you acclimated to the university. Different organizations come out and show their like organizations, like showcase themselves. And then we also have at the end there's like it's called Roundup. It's a big comedy show. So there's a bunch of activities for students to do to kind of meet people and get involved on campus. And through that office they have what's called U Connect, which is like it's kind of like a Facebook thing, but not really Facebook, that only incoming students can sign up for. So it's all freshman students that are on it, first time in college students, as well as like the Week of Welcome leaders or the orientation team leaders. They're part of it too, so they have somebody to like reach out and talk to. It was kind of cool when I was on it. I mean, they didn't have it when I was a freshman, but when I was a Week of Welcome leader, I was on it as a leader, and students actually wrote to me and like utilized it.
This is an interesting point, because I think social media has really changed the way that some social, our services in terms of welcoming students to campus has changed. And it sounds like it's even changed within the 4 years that you've been in
USF
school.
has changed so much since I started.
One of the things I was hoping that we could touch on are tips about roommates. I think that for many students coming away and going to college for the first time, they may never have shared a room before. Now, in visiting campuses, I have seen that there are a number of single rooms. They're like on suites, and so you have a single room, but you share a common area. So the concept of sharing is probably out there for pretty much most students that are going on to college in their freshman year. And two areas that I'm hoping that we touch on. One is, how would you recommend that people approach the forms that they get, the surveys about who they are and the kind of roommate that they might best be matched with? And any tips for success?
Take them very seriously. We take them seriously, so you need to take them seriously. A good example is I'll have students who will fill out a form saying they go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and get up at 7 in the morning, and come to find out their parents were either looking over their shoulder or filling them out. And that really doesn't help us much, because especially if you don't go to bed at 10 and wake up at 7, because we're going to pair you with somebody else who says that they go to bed relatively early. And if you're a late night owl, that's a problem for us. Take them seriously. We've changed our forms. We used to ask just bubble questions that people can check yes or no. I go to bed early, I go to bed late. And we now ask them to write little essays. Believe it or not, you're not done writing essays, because we really think that essays can give you a good sense of what type of a roommate you are. If you're very, very nitpicky about every single detail, we look for somebody else who's equally nitpicky so that you'll fit together. Whereas somebody who has just 2 words or 3 words, we figure they can go together and kind of chill out together and not have any sort of problem. So they're very important. We read them very closely, at least at New College, and I would really recommend filling them out. There's no perfect match. That's something that I oftentimes talk to parents about or students about. I think part of the first year is learning how to negotiate and how to speak up for yourself and how to mediate when things aren't working well for you.
And on that point, I would add that if they do feel a conflict brewing, that I know we work very closely with our resident advisors in terms of how to negotiate a roommate conflict, and so they should try to talk to their roommate, but sometimes that's a little bit scary, so they can go and talk to the resident advisor who might have ideas. And we also put into play, if it's necessary, a roommate contract, and so that the roommates are sitting down and identifying, okay, we're going to agree to this and this and this. But I second your remark about parents filling out.
This is one of the first times that parents really need to pull back and let them fill them out, and don't look at them because they may say things on there that they don't necessarily want you to see. That's okay. We really want the real person who's coming to college. We don't want any sort of fictional roommate situation where we're setting them up in places.
I agree too, because I mean, personally, my first roommate experience, when I first walked in, it was, she's gonna kill me if she sees this, but it was awful. Like, I hated, like, I didn't hate her, but I was like, oh my goodness, like, we were just complete opposites. And I remember looking at my sister and being like, I'm never gonna be able to live with her, and we're still like best friends to this day. So it really does go to show, like, I mean, I think I filled out my survey pretty honestly when I did come, but like, and now that I look at it, we were more alike. Like, we both did stay up late, we both did like it cold in our room, we both are clean people, like, so they obviously matched us, like, based on all of that. But when our first just like the backgrounds we came from and the type of things that we didn't really have, like, she was a cheerleader, I played sports, we were just complete opposites, and she was very outgoing and I was very reserved kind of thing. So for us, for my first impression of her, I was like, oh man. And then once we started living together, I was like, oh, she's kind of cool. And then, I mean, we still are complete opposites. Like, she's involved in completely different things than I'm involved on campus, complete different majors, the whole 9 yards of being different. But we are still very close friends. So it's also that my best advice would be, like, don't judge your roommate right off the bat, because I've seen a lot of people who are complete opposites. And your roommate, like I said, she's my best friend, but you don't have to have your best friend as your roommate. Like, you can tolerate somebody and live with them and not have to be best friends with them. So if it doesn't, we had what we call suite mates at USF, where we shared a room, and then the people who share a bathroom with us are our suite mates. And the person who shared the bathroom on the other side, she's also still one of my best friends, and we were identical. And I remember the first day being like, man, why can't I room with Natalie? And then now that we're still really good friends, but all of us are really good friends because we didn't kind of like run. So it is important to, reach out to your RAs if you have problems, but I always say give it a chance. I also know there's also, or when I lived on campus, there was a rule at USF where you couldn't do anything for the first 2 weeks. So they kind of try to force you to stay there and learn to deal with the person and try to work it out before you do anything. And like you were saying about the roommate contracts, we actually start that as soon as you move in. So when you move in, you do have to fill out a contract with your roommate saying, like, I mean, you can make the rules as strict or as lenient as possible that you want, but like no guests after 9 p.m., which is crazy in college because you're up to like 4. But depending on your roommate, you do set up those guidelines. And then little things like, my roommate and I were very broad about it, but we said, like, just make sure you lock the door every time you leave, because she had like a brand new Mac and I had my computer, and just, we had a lot of stuff in our room where, not that crime is high on campuses, but just the things that you don't think about, like locking your bedroom door. I never locked my bedroom door at home, so just little things like that.
Well, let's pick up on that. Some of the, in a sense, trials and tribulations that students go through as they move onto campus and they've been there for a couple of months or a couple of weeks, and they're recognizing that they really do have their ability to make their own choices. Clearly, one of them has to do with security and locking your door. Another one has to do whether or not you go to class, choosing the right balance of activities. And I would like to mention the social activities that may surround partying. So any comments about that or rules of the road that you might offer students?
I think it's important to be true to yourself. I think it's really important. It's hard because when you're in this new environment, I've oftentimes described when you arrive at college, it's a little bit like a culture shock. When you move to a new country, or if you move to a new city, there's that certain sense, where do I get my food? Where do I get my clothes? How do I settle myself in? That's exactly what the students are going through. And because of that, there's sometimes an inclination to make yourself into something you're not. Sometimes because you want to make sure you have friends, you're more social than you actually probably probably feel comfortable doing, or sometimes you stay up later, or sometimes you skip classes, or whatever might be the things that aren't necessarily what you were like when you were in high school. And so I think it's at that moment it's really important for students to step back, usually the first or second weekend, and really think about who you want to be and how you want to present yourself, because you can make some bad decisions in those opening weeks that can haunt you.
The good thing about college is you kind of, especially if you go like out of your hometown, you like start all over. So it's a brand new start for you. So you don't have to be the person you were in high school, or you don't have to be the person you were when you were growing up. Like obviously you want to make the good choices, but you can also step outside of your comfort zone. So don't like go opposite extremes and hate what you're going to do, but like you do have the opportunity to start fresh. So if you'd made a poor choice in high school, that poor choice doesn't have to follow you to college. Like you have you're brand new. Like when I first went to my summer program of Psi, I knew absolutely nobody that was there. So it did give me opportunity to start fresh and do everything that I did need to do.
Mm-hmm. And I grew up in St. Petersburg, and that's where Eckerd is located. But I lived on campus. But my first year, I was still very connected with my friends there. In St. Petersburg, and so I didn't make the leap of becoming an active member of the Eckerd community. And so I would really caution people if they're staying in their hometown to go out to these events and to really become an active member of the community, because it's very, like you said, very easy to stay in your comfort zone. And it wasn't really until I sort of cut my ties with my high school friends and made the commitment to becoming an Eckerd citizen that I felt a part of the community. So.
I would say the first 3 weeks, don't go home. Do not go home for the weekend. First 3 or 4 weeks, even though you'll be tempted, even though you can text your friends, even though you very much feel as though you're a part of that world that's still back home, turn off your cell phone, try to get away from your Facebook briefly, and really get yourself out.
And even living off campus. I know so many times freshmen think, oh, it's so exciting, I'm going to live in my own apartment. But I really find that if you don't live on campus, I would prefer definitely the first and even the second year living on campus, because otherwise you really you're always seen as sort of an outsider, I feel. At the
I think one other thing
events.
I wanted to touch on too is tips for communicating for parents. In today's era of our cell phones and instant messaging, there's a lot of connection between students and parents. And as they move ahead to college, what are just some, and I just have to say in a quick 30 seconds, if each of you could give a little tip as to what you think is the best way for parents to stay connected.
I think it's important for students to call you and you not to call them all the time. I think it's important for students to set the boundaries, especially in the beginning. They'll call you a lot. There may be a time when they'll stop calling you, and don't panic. That's usually when the parents call us and say, she hasn't called us in 2 days. And I'll say, well, you know, back in my day, we called our parents once a week because we had payphones that we had to use. And actually, that's usually a good sign that they're actually settling in quite nicely.
I would say I don't know, I talk to my mom every day because I just love my mom. But I'm sure there's times that I've gone days without talking to her. And the big thing is, especially when you live on campus, like you're always around so many people. So like you don't always want to answer a phone call from your mom, not necessarily because you're doing something wrong, but just it's loud, or college, we're really loud in college. So like just give them the opportunity to call you. Like I call my mom like every day at 5. I get off work at 5. So I would like call her when I'm walking back to my residence.
So you've made an arrangement.
Yeah, that, and then like if I didn't call from her, it's just a little thing you could do. Like there is text messaging. Almost everybody has text messaging, so saying like, hey, just want to check in, love you, and that's like enough communication. Like you don't have to have an hour conversation with them every day.
Well, I would like to thank you all for coming. I think it's been a great conversation, and we could probably carry this on for another half hour. You've been wonderful, and I do hope that the parents that are watching feel a little bit more comfortable with this transition that's coming ahead, and the students as well. A college education is the largest investment a person ever makes in themselves. Future programs in this series will cover tips for middle school and high school students in preparing for college, financing a college education, staying on track with the college application process, and the state of college admissions in our Florida public schools, colleges, and universities. I'd like to thank today's guests and METV. I'm Robin Groelle. Thank you for watching.